joined now with the head of political polling at Opinion Research, and that is Chris Curtis. Chris, what do you take away from all of this, and what sort of effect do you think what Liz Truss is saying is having?
Well, the big argument at the moment is about the economy, unsurprisingly, because it's the biggest issue facing the country. Massive increase in energy prices, cost of living crisis, potential recession around the corner. And I think what's interesting is Liz Truss has been around saying, I don't mind being unpopular as a pollster. That's kind of a weird thing to be hearing from a politician. And I think, broadly speaking, that's not unfair, because a lot of these policies she's putting forward are very different to where the country are in economic. We've been talking for years about how the public are maybe to the right of politicians on cultural issues, Brexit, immigration, but to the left of politicians on economic issues. And Liz Truss so far is ignoring that. She's saying we're going to prioritise tax cut for businesses, we're going to prioritise tax cuts for rich people. She's really doubling down on this hope that she can put this stuff forward now. It can be incredibly unpopular, completely distant from where the public is, but that it is going to help grow the economy, which means come the next election, we've got a growing economy, and people give her credit for that and don't punish her for all of the unpopular decisions she's making now.
She's trying to paint a comparison with Margaret Thatcher all the time. And Margaret Thatcher came through with being unpopular, and she basically is putting in the back of Conservative Party members for the conference in their minds, I'm Maggie Mark too.
Yeah, that's true. And Margaret Thatcher, is still reasonably popular in the country today among large groups of voters, and seemed to have been a successful prime minister, which we haven't had many of between her and now. I think the main thing to sort of note with this, though, is that while we remember Thatcher that way now, it came pretty damn close to falling apart. Her first few years were incredibly unpopular. Before she went on to win the Falklands War. Now, I don't think Liz Truss can hope that a sort of popular, a small winnable war which increases her popularity is going to come across on the horizon. She needs to, in a very short space of time, turn the economy around from the potential recession we're about to face to a period of growth before the next election. And I think that's a massive task that she is gambling her entire premiership on.
Yeah, and, day 16 of her premiership, and she is still 10 percentage points behind Labour in the polls. So it is a huge gamble for her. And here she is being sidelined by the US president. This meeting in Downing Street cancelled on Sunday. Now he's putting out a tweet, apparently directly criticising her approach to economics and this trickle-down...
All right, he was put into row 14 in the Abbey.
He was put into row 14 in the Abbey, but here we are, her camp coming out instantly saying this is absolutely, just coincidental timing, there's nothing to do with our politics per se. But I read that exact phrase in the papers here on Sunday in the UK, that he was distancing himself from her Reagan-Thatcherite economics because he didn't believe in trickle-down policies. So there's briefing coming from Washington. There has to be. This isn't just a coincidence.
I think it is worth noting that, obviously, the rest of the world is to a certain extent pulling back. The US is the most important example, but it is to a certain extent pulling back from the kind of economics that Thatcher and Reagan put forward. But while the rest of the world's doing that, Liz Truss is very much doubling down on it and hoping it's going to be successful. It is a big economic argument that's going to be in the coming years. I think the other important thing to note, though, is that, we sort of put together Reagan and Thatcher as if they had the same economic policy. They actually had quite different economic policies. Reagan was in the camp of cutting taxes but not cutting spending, massively blowing up the debt and the deficit. Thatcher, yes, she cut taxes, but she also cut spending and kept the debt and the deficit under control. Actually, when you look at Liz Truss's policy so far, she's still keeping the triple lock on pensions in place. She's still keeping spending on the NHS in place. She's just spent loads of money freezing energy bills. She's very much more in the Reagan camp of economics than in the Thatcher camp. And it's important, I think, to differentiate those two groups.
Well, Chris, what we want to do is to find out what camp one of our listeners and viewers is. That's William Pickup. We go to Glossop in Derbyshire, where William's watching us this morning and listening.
Good morning.
William. Hiya, what do you make of what you're hearing so far today ahead of conference season?
I agree with virtually everything that Chris has just said. She is trying to move herself more to the Thatcherite type policies. She has only got a very short space of time. For me, I think as we stand today, the next general election is already lost. I think that the polls show that. I think people feel it's time for a change. They believe that Boris did a good job with
the
Brexit.
Conservative Party. Just to make that clear, William, you say that as a Conservative, that the next election is lost?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. Right. That's where we stand today. And what she's going to have to do in the next 2 years, which is an incredibly short space of time. Thatcher won an election. She had 5 years ahead of us to get through the mess. What Truss is going to have to do is be bold. And that's what she started to do. She started to create clear blue water between her and Starmer. It's a gamble, but it's a gamble she has to take, just like energy costs and the debt.
Well, let's go to the pollster here, Chris Curtis, and see if he thinks that's a gamble that would pay off.
Well, I suppose what you have to remember is the difficult situation that Liz Truss is in, right? It was always going to be very, very hard for her to win the next election. They've been in power for a very long time. We're in an incredibly difficult economic situation. So this was never going to be easy. There's no easy choices for her to make. I think there is a strong argument that just going really hard for growth and hoping for the best is her best chance of winning the next general election. But having said that, I still think it's going to be incredibly tough, given the time frame, given what she's trying to do over such a short space of time. I think it's going to be incredibly tough. For her to win a majority at the next election.
Let's just get William's thoughts on that then. Kind of agreeing with what you're saying, William, but also saying it's very difficult to turn things around in the time frame that Liz Truss has got. How much does that worry you, given your prediction there?
Well, it is worrying, obviously, if you want the Conservatives to get in at the next election. But I think people do feel there's time for a change. Yeah. And if the Tories don't get on top of immigration, don't get on top of the energy cap and the economics of this, don't demonstrate the green shoots of economic growth in the next 2 years, they'll be toast.